Croft is an executive coach with extensive experience supporting senior professionals through major career transition. She has coached high-level returners on programmes with organisations such as Nomura Bank, Shell, and a number of lawyers returning to private practice after years out. Where do you see the similarities between the returners you support and those workers now set to return from furlough?
Well, both situations are fundamentally a transition. I think our returners have obviously got different reasons for being away from work. So whether that's parental leave, bereavement, illness. In this case, people have experienced an unexpected, sudden change in circumstances. And the last 6 months of their lives, like our returners, are going to have been very different from what they're about to go into and what they had before. People are potentially coming back with fairly heightened levels of stress and anxiety.
So what impact could this have on employees as they return from furlough?
I think that the important point is that you're not going to see the same reaction from everyone. So each person's experience of the last 6 months will have been different. On the one hand, you've got people who've spent 6 months walking their dog, hanging out with their family, sunbathing, reading novels and having a really nice time with potentially a sense of security that their job may be okay. Flip side of it, you have people who might have been living in a one-bedroom flat by themselves, not seeing anybody, or worse still, dealing with major trauma in their lives around illness, homeschooling, whatever it may be. So everyone's experience will be different, and the most important thing that businesses and leaders need to do as a result of that is to think about every individual and their particular set of circumstances, and also concentrate on the whole person, not the bit of the person that turns up at work. It's well documented that engaged employees are more productive, but increasingly research is showing that there is a very significant impact on workplace performance if the wider life of that person is not in a good state. So as a leader, you need to know what's happening for people outside of work and be able to respect that and accommodate as far as possible that for people to support them fully.
How do you think businesses can make the transition back as seamless as possible?
Well, when we're working with businesses bringing back returners, we focus on three main areas of action: safety, structure, and communication. So if I start with safety, in the context of returners and returner programs, we're particularly talking about kind of psychological safety, so mindset, well-being. Mm-hmm. So that's everything from how the person is welcomed into or back into the organisation, what the kind of quality of support, follow-up, coaching conversations is, checking in on well-being, making sure that you spot quickly any emerging issues. Mm-hmm. I think in this context, you need to add into that physical safety. So people have got a kind of health concern. Mm-hmm. So that's looking at the kind of environmental issues in the office around how you're keeping people, hygiene factors, those sorts of things, that you've got really good, robust measures that are well communicated in place around how people can stay safe in the office so they're not worrying about it. The second one is structure. And I think for people to come back into the business, and what we're looking for here is an accelerated return to a performing state. Mm-hmm. And for that to happen, people need to be really clear about what is expected of them and have well set out objectives. They need to understand what's required of them from a reporting back perspective, and there needs to be a structured mechanism in place for review and feedback. And if you have all of those factors in place, people know where they stand, they know what they have to do, and they can get on with it and be corrected if it's not going according to plan. Thirdly, I talked about communication, and that underpins absolutely everything. And that's true for our returners as they go in, but also in this situation. So the expectations and objectives need to be clearly communicated. The safety mechanisms and kind of environmental factors need to be clearly communicated. But also in this situation, I think it's also about not shying away from the difficult messages. There's so much uncertainty out there in the news around the economy and financial impact of this crisis. And people are going to be worrying about what that means for their company and their job. And counterintuitively, actually people will worry less the more information they're given, even if that information suggests that there are difficult times ahead. So be really transparent and honest with your communication as far as possible.
How long would the settling in take for those coming back?
Well, again, this isn't a one size fits all. And I would say this is an area where there's probably a fairly big difference between our returners and people returning now. Our returners have been away for much longer periods of time, and in many cases are going back into a different organisation than one they've worked with previously. So that can make things, we typically see probably a 3-month period before people hit normal performance levels. I think in this situation, if you have what we talked about, a really well structured return plan with good communication and people feel safe, it could be really very rapid. You need to be thinking about what's changed. So what's different for people now than before they left, not just in terms of the global situation, but has their role changed because of different economic conditions? Are there any skills gaps now? Is there training and development needed to help them perform better? Are they going to be feeling uncertain about how to do particular aspects of their role? So to really accelerate it, have your clear, structured, consistent communication plan, expectation setting, create a safe environment, and most importantly, take a really active interest in what's going on for each of your people at a micro level, what's happening for them in and out of work, so that you can spot issues and support them and respect them according to their own circumstances.
Do you have any other advice for leaders of teams or businesses for the coming months as they welcome people back?
Yeah, so I think actually leaders in this climate have got a really challenging job ahead of them, because I think they're going to need to be able to utilise or deploy two really seemingly different and almost contradictory leadership styles or approaches. On the one hand, the softer leadership skills are going to be absolutely critical in terms of showing some humility and leading with dignity and being really in touch with what's happening for your people, so high levels of empathy. But on the flip side, in uncertain times, we need strong leadership. We need people with a strong and clear vision, and your stereotypical what does a leader look like, plenty of that. But at the same time, however confident your message is, you also need to be able to be willing to change if the situation requires it, and welcome input and collaboration from your team. Creativity may be required, and pooling the resources of those around you is going to make you more effective at doing that. So it's really hard, I think, for leaders to get that balance right. If I was going to give any advice at all, it would be make sure you're aware of what you're good at and who in your team is good at the things that you're not, and be aware or find out how you're being received by people. So focus on your development as a leader and feedback, and make sure you're adapting and learning as you go.